Welcome to the video homily for Holy Week as we reflect together on this great week of the Christian Church, but also the things that are happening in our world at the moment. The Easter story unfolding around us at the moment, this Holy Week, is very familiar. Every year as we rehearse this story, the great themes of betrayal and abandonment or death are part of our common story. For many of us, the painful story of Judas' act of betrayal is a little bit close to the bone, and it kind of reflects our own story. There have been times when people we trusted, people who were friends or perhaps even partners, have betrayed us. And these betrayals by people we love and care for cause us enormous pain or even a primal agony. But they're moments that intersect with Jesus' story during this Holy Week. I don't know if you've seen the movie Jesus Christ Superstar. It's a powerful account of the Holy Week story that focuses on Judas, and we see the story through Judas' eyes. And here in this portrayal, we find a really tormented man who had hoped for so much from Jesus. And when those hopes and dreams turned to dust, they turned out to not have been real. He turned on Jesus and betrayed him for a token sum of money. How could one chosen as a disciple, how could one who was enjoying the privilege of intimate friendship with Jesus be tempted to such a betrayal? It's a great moral dilemma, one of the great moral dilemmas of history. Holy Week is also a story of abandonment. Not one of his disciples stayed the course. And before Pilate, before the crowd baying for blood, Jesus stood alone. Deserted by everyone, deserted by his friends, and stood there in a moment of utter aloneness. But then at their last meal together, knowing what lay ahead, Jesus washes his disciples' feet. And yes, in a great act of love and understanding and tenderness, he washes the feet of the one he knew betray him, and he washes the feet of those who would deny him and abandon him to save their own skin. This final meal, this Last Supper, is surrounded by treachery. But at the heart of it is love, not only for his friends, but for the one who would become his enemy, and for those who are fragile, weak, and flawed. And as Jesus sits down with these flawed and failing disciples, he instructs them and he instructs us to love one another. That's part of the command of this week, love one another. And at this meal, he holds up bread and wine and says, "This is my body, this is my blood." And as it was then, so it is now. The Eucharist, the sharing of bread and wine, is not only for holy and righteous people who feel they've got everything together. Eucharist has its place right in the very thick of everything in our world and in our lives. Jesus never waits until we're perfect or until we're holy. Instead, he comes to us just as we are, failing, broken human beings. And in this holy meal that in better times we share together, Jesus shares our sorrows, sympathizes with our sadness, struggles with us in our weakness and our failings, and promises to help us overcome each and every one of them. In the book of Lamentations in the Old Testament, not a book we read very often, when we read it, we feel the despair of the writer as he faces the destruction of the world as he knew it. The land is invaded, the people taken away. And his words are full of condemnation for God who's let these things happen. But in these despair-filled writings, there are moments of hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. So in the midst of despair, in the midst of destruction, in the midst of doubt and fear, the command is simply to wait but also to wait in hope. Hope is never a Pollyanna optimism. Hope is a looking ahead in faith that God is indeed love and that God can be trusted. Holy Week is just like that. Although we see and experience the very worst the world has to offer, that ends in the darkness of Good Friday and ends in the despair and all the hopelessness of Holy Saturday. Easter hope and resurrection and joy lie just over the hill, lie just across the horizon. And so it is in our world at the moment. Despite the darkness and the bleakness and the fear and the anxiety, God has not left. God has not abandoned us. God has not disappeared, and God isn't some kind of crazy dictator meting out punishments. God is love. And just across the horizon lies Easter. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Therefore, I will hope in him. The Lord be with you this Holy Week.